masculine and feminine is because it's an abstracted sex cult, right? It's the idea that for conception purposes, you need a male and you need a female to create life. That's on a purely physical level that has now been abstracted to simply represent energies that are required to create something. And this is in response to coming out of Christianity, where there's a belief in one God that is primarily masculine. So it's giving that sort of voice to the feminine and giving it more power and more rank than what most people who are coming from a monotheistic religion have experienced in the past. And I think we can all agree that the rise of the divine feminine is really needed at this time because it really shifts the scope of how society operates and how we treat each other. And but then as I'm thinking about all these things, I'm like, well, when we're talking about being non-binary, does that mean that you're both genders or no genders? You know, and when we're talking about intent versus impact, as far as like trying to have representation, if people feel that they or identify with being non-binary, does that mean they don't identify with either the masculine or the feminine? And so I wanted to ask you about that. And can you get into that a little bit for me before we
Yeah,
continue
absolutely.
on?
So non-binary just means that someone does not entirely identify with either binary man or binary woman. Now, the thing is, you can actually be a non-binary man or non-binary woman. That just means that you feel like a man or a woman, but you feel like you don't entirely stay within that boundary. And there are some people that feel like they are a mix of both. That is usually called either bigender or genderqueer. There are some people that feel like they are neither. That is usually called agender. There are some
Okay.
people that feel like they go back and forth, and that's called gender fluid. There's some people that feel like there's a separate gender outside of it. That's called maverick. So there's all different types of non-binary, and like all these types of non-binary exist. And as for the ability just sexually to like reproduce life, there's also that, for example, you can have trans men and trans women. So like my brother was a trans man or is a trans man who has given birth. So you have two men here who gave birth to a child. My metamor is a trans woman, and my spouse is non-binary. So you have a non-binary person and a woman who gave birth. And so we have like this great diversity of people creating life and this great diversity of non-binary that exists. And so it's really difficult to pin down what an individual definition is because everyone is so very different.
Sure.
And then me coming to the table as a magic practitioner, as a person with my own spiritual beliefs, because I'm both non-binary and I'm actually intersex. So, and I'm dropping that bomb on Briana. I never told her
That's
that
all right.
before.
We can talk about that more. I mean, I love the idea of creating new genders or having new genders or all levels of gender expression. Like I think, you know, I just love that new stuff keeps coming up all the time as people are like, wait, I don't fit with that. I don't like that. And I think a lot of it is in response to these sort of crumbling structures of what it means to be human in general in this society, right?
Mhm.
So I love that there's so many different ways to identify and express oneself. Where I start to feel some concern is like when we're talking about like making sure that we're being inclusive and not alienating anybody. Are we hinging this on quote unquote biology, or are we hinging this on ideals? Are we hinging this on whatever? I did some reading into Gerald Gardner
Mhm.
to kind of get ready for this. And it turns out that he's wildly homophobic. I didn't know that before. So again, as in thinking about composing a response or a conversation about this, I was like, you know, it seems to me that people might feel uncomfortable and not even know why, because some of the tenets of what Wicca and is founded
Mhm.
on is like integrated into the ideologies in a kind of an insidious way. So now we're at
Yeah.
a point in history where we need to deconstruct that and come to some better terms and some better understandings, right?
Yeah. But one thing that I do want to consider is that even if there were homophobic ideals at the conception of Wicca, like Wicca can still be a very empowering thing for a lot of people because like Briana here is obviously a very wonderful person and a very empowering Wiccan priestess that I know. In addition, like I'm just going to speak to the audience here is that I in my life for some amount of time in my life did identify as Wiccan and followed that path. And how like one way I kind of grappled with the gender aspect of it is that you can have deities that are your god or goddess that don't strictly follow ideas of a set gender. For example, like my god that I had was Dionysus, who is like gender fluid as you can get. So it's like we have this god that I'm calling to who is like sometimes Dionysus presents as a woman and like that's okay. So it's like you can have these different deities that you interact with and have these like two sets here where you're not having a monotheistic religion and you can still have this beautiful religion and pull good things out of it by like relating to deities that resonate with you. And I really want to encourage people that. And it's like we can dissect the problematic parts and pull that apart and look at how it has been harmful while still recognizing that it has potential for great good and healing for people.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think it can be very healing and inclusive, and I hope that more and more people are looking at like, well, why do I believe this, and why do I think this way, and is it really important, and is that really the thing to stand on, or is my judgment being clouded by conditioning or even unmet needs?
I know of a person who identifies as a man, but a divine feminine man, and that's really beautiful for him because he's never been able to express the divine feminine in himself before until he came to that part of his spirituality. So that duality that we have, it's like it has the potential to be greatly freeing to people. And I think where it becomes dangerous is when we impose it on people against their will. So it's
Totally,
like if we can allow people to express themselves in this way, and I think if someone says that they express themselves through a binary feminine and masculine energy or a binary like masculine and feminine deities, like to say that they're wrong, that's harmful too. It's like we need to unpack both ends of the spectrum. It's just like transgender people shouldn't hate on cisgender people. That's equally as harmful.
right,
Um,
right.
so like they're really I feel like what it needs to come down to is like love and understanding on all sides of the equation, not to be like all fluffy bunny here, but like Brianna knows that as a magician, I am not very fluffy bunny, but when it
No,
comes to my like ideology, I am because I just believe in the idea of people being met where their needs are and like seeing because like our spirituality is a reflection of what our heart and soul needs and
absolutely.
like we are the one that know that best or if we are not very self-aware then like our higher self our intuition our like higher consciousness and like the deities and spirits that are all surround us know that best and we can like find a path that that matches our needs.
So this is interesting because I'm like, again, we're thinking about what is masculine, what is feminine, and I don't
Yes.
know if I've shared this with you before, but like I came into this life knowing my past life, I was a man.
Mhm.
And by the time I was 15, I definitely felt the gender dysphoria where I was like, I'm a masculine spirit in a female form. And
Mhm.
coming into high school and in my late teens is when some of the first um, people were coming out about the first sex change operations that were being made available. And I spent quite a bit of time in my 20s debating about whether or not I wanted to transition. And at that time, one of the sort of deities that came to me that I really resonated with and I continue to resonate with is that of Kuan Yin, because Kuan Yin started out as a bodhisattva in early Buddhism in India. And as their legend kind of traveled across China, they became more and more feminine until they changed his gender to female and is now primarily represented as a female bodhisattva. And some people believe that he is still him. He just changes genders when he wants to, or he can be either gender. And I really resonated with that because I was like, I decided that I really wanted to be more like androgynous, like embodying both genders to the best of my ability. Because to me, a lot of the spiritual tenets that I've read are all about balancing those energies.
So I identify as non-binary and mostly off of the binary spectrum. So I'm more maverick, but somewhat gender fluid. And so that's one of the reasons why Dionysus kind of resonates so much to me, because Dionysus is like, okay, am I allowed to swear on this podcast thing?
Yes, you're allowed to swear.
Okay, Dionysus is like, I don't give a fuck about gender. I'm just gonna be what I want to be. And I like that is my mood. So it's like, people can find spirits that match their energy and what they need because there's such a diversity of spirits out there. And
Totally.
as for the question of what is masculine and what is feminine, like I feel that that is something only a person can answer themselves because what is feminine in me is going to look different from what is feminine in you. I would encourage listeners to like think about it for themselves, like what does masculine mean to me? What does feminine mean to me? And like how can I embody both? Or like, do I want to embody both? Or do I want to embody something else that's like completely neither from both of these?
Right.
So it's really like up to what your spirit is called to and what feels like home to you.
Totally, totally. I totally agree with that. And you said several things that have given me chills. So I'm like, ooh,
Oh, yay.
oh, speaking truth over here. So thinking about like representation, right? Because when I first got that question from you, my first instinct was to go, are there people who are feeling, and particularly if we go back to the Z Budapest example, how many people are trying to attend Wiccan events in public, at festivals, wherever, and feeling like they're not being represented, that they can't see themselves in the particular representation of the masculine or the feminine. And in the particular Wiccan denomination that I've been initiated into, it has a little bit of a trinity where it's the Lord and the Lady and the Brotherhood. And a lot of people take exception to that language. So they're like ancestors, ancients, the council, whatever. And so I started thinking like, if we're talking about representation and inclusivity, I would put anybody who maybe feels like they're something separate or different than what the Lord and the Lady represent, then they could easily be a part of the ancients, the council, the collective, where it's like everybody's expressed there, everybody has a place there, and it's not about that particular aspect of the Trinity isn't gendered because it's everybody. It's everybody who has wisdom to share with the coven, with the group, with the practitioners. So what do you think about that?
I really wish that I had known about that third aspect of Wicca when I was a Wiccan, because that would have been a lot more validating for me. Because ultimately I ended up like kind of leaving Wicca and going on my own journey elsewhere because like the binary just I couldn't grapple with it even while I was resonating with Dionysus, like I still felt like there wasn't a place for me in there. And like I didn't hate on other people who were Wiccan. I just felt like this is not for me. And had I known that there was that third option, like I might have felt like there was a place for me there. So I feel like I I really hope that Wicca is able to be more vocal about that third aspect to it, because I feel like a lot more people are able to resonate to that and connect to it, especially if you hear that, oh, I'm not a lord or a lady, but I'm one of the ancients. Like hearing that you're one of the ancients is powerful.
Right? I'm
That is
getting
like
chills as you're talking about it. I'm like,
like
yes,
hearing that I'm one of the ancients, that is power right there, and that is like handing me a lot of influence on in just one word. So like I find that greatly like empowering. I find that greatly like connecting to people who don't fit into the confines of a lord or lady. And I really hope that that idea of Wicca gets more propagated